So our next speaker is someone who has really changed, shaped, rebuilt, and is doing so much for the Bronx, a true Bronxite. Now, her title is very important. Marlene Cintron, I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly, is president of the Bronx Overall Economic Development Corporation and Business Initiative Corporation of New York. She's here with us tonight. She's done so much for that borough, which I really love. And if you adventured out of Manhattan once in a while, you will find out that there's so much beyond and so much art and culture going on there. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Marlene Cintron.
Good evening. I'm trying to figure out what the heck I'm doing here. There's amazing women here. I really was touched by the historical perspective, and we always have to think about where we came from. And I am dedicating tonight to my abuelita, to my grandmother, because the first speaker really and truly threw me back. And so I've got to share two of my abuelita stories. I promise it'll be under a minute and a half, but I got to share, because in reality, it is who we came from that really and ultimately makes us who we are. And we have to embrace that and love it and nurture it and share it then with our sons and our daughters. So, abuelita. I too am a Latina of Puerto Rican descent, born and raised in the Bronx. My grandmother, of course, was in Santurce, Puerto Rico. She had a little wooden house on stilts. The pigs would grow underneath the house, so they didn't get too sunburned. And she raised 8 children by herself because her husband misbehaved. We got to talk about that too. But in order for her to ensure that she had enough to take care of her children, she decided to buy the wooden house next door and made it into a rooming house. So she would rent out the apartments or the rooms for $7 a week. Back then, that was a lot of money. And she took my mom, who was the skinniest one of them all, the runt of the litter, and every Tuesday she would go to collect her $7 from all of her inquilinos, all of the people who were renting her rooms. And mom had been trained by my grandmother. All right, this is how it went. She'd go, Don Jose, it's time to pay the $7. And Don Jose would come and he would pay them. Next door, Don Carlos, most of the time they were all men. Don Carlos, we're here to collect. Don Carlos would come out with looking very forlorn. I'm sorry, I don't have the $7 today. Can I give it to you next week? That was my mother's clue, or cue. My grandmother had trained her. And my skinny mom would go, Mommy, I am so hungry now, we won't have any money to eat. And the man invariably would run back into the room, stick his hand under the mattress, and whip out the $7. All right? So, we have always been entrepreneurial and smart about how we get what we are due. Okay. Story number 2. Grandpa comes back into the picture. He was charming and gorgeous. And he was a flirt. So grandma decided to buy the little bodega, the little grocery store across the street from the house. And she parked my grandfather at the counter with the register. And back then, all of the damas used to get very, very dressed with the lipstick, with the hair, to go to the bodega to buy their daily food, because everything was bought fresh back then. My grandmother's store made more money than any other store in the barrio. My grandmother knew how to get what she was due. Good evening, Mr. Ambassador. My apologies. I got so excited about sharing my grandma's story that I didn't. So yes, we all have abuelitas and we love them and we always have to remember them. Okay, so remember where I came from, all right? My mother taught at a public school and she also became an entrepreneur. When we were growing up, Dad had a Pentecostal church and there wasn't a lot of money, and so Mom would go to the Lower East Side and she would buy stockings for 50 cents. And back then they came in a box and you bought maybe 10 or 12 or 6, I don't know, at 50 cents, and then she would bring them with her to church and she would sell these stockings to the ladies in the church for $1. And so I learned very quickly that if you're gonna sell anything, it should be at least at a 100% markup. I was brought into BOEDC in 2010 to be the head of the Bronx Overall Economic Development Corporation. And if you remember what our economy looked like, 2009, the sky fell. And what I love to say is that when the nation catches an economic development cold, the South Bronx caught pneumonia. So what is the Bronx's response to this mess? They brought in a woman. Smart man. So our unemployment rate was 14.2%. And that was a good number because in reality, that 14% represented the 22.4% from the South Bronx, combined with the 8.5% in Co-op City, which was full of retirees. Okay, so in reality, the unemployment rate of people who really were able and interested in working was closer to that 22 than that 8. All right, so I am asked by the borough president to bring that number down. He's like, Marlene, try and fix what you can, but the most important thing to me is that I no longer want to be #1 in unemployment. Now, you need to understand that since the New York State Department of Labor had been taking statistics in 1964, the Bronx had always been #1 in unemployment in all of New York State. So I say to the borough president, and you gotta understand, I had no clue how I was gonna do this. How many people do I have to get in order for us to go from #1 to #2? And he said, around 11,000. Okay. I said, okay. And my plan was to begin to rebrand the borough of the Bronx and invite the biggest companies that I could find to consider moving to the borough of the Bronx. Well, we did okay. Now, in order to support my Bronx stakeholders, my businesses that already were employing my Bronx residents, because I didn't want to lose any more, okay? I needed to gain 11,000, but I couldn't afford to lose any more. I needed to lend them money so that A, they could stay in business, and B, they can continue to hire and expand and hire more people. But because of the banks had just fallen on their faces, there was no money to lend. They weren't lending any money. Fortunately, I was an SBA 504 lender, so the federal government, they print their own money. What do they care? I started lending their money. It just so happened that BOEDC had $22 million in their checking account. It wasn't mine, but I could use it. And so guess what we did? We started lending money. And we used some of that money to rebrand the borough of the Bronx, because part of what we need to always learn is that nobody is authorized to tell our story. Seize your story. Share your story, because it's your story. And if nothing else, also share your sister's story and your friend's story, and raise your women up. Because when you do that, what are you doing? you're lifting your whole community up. And so, I lent a lot of it. We now have a portfolio of over $100 million. Our economy is better. And all I want to do is share with you, because we still have one more great, amazing woman that we're going to hear from, where we stand today, and this is hot off the presses. This is as of this morning. Since 2009, because we have told such a great story, and I'm going to kind of look at the numbers because they're really fresh. Last year, we got $3.48 billion of private equity invested in the Bronx. What does that mean? It's not city money. It's not federal money. Investors said, I'm going to invest in the Bronx because the Bronx is hot, okay? But that doesn't tell the whole story. That was a 27% increase over the year before. Since 2009, there has been a total of $18.9 billion invested in private equity in the Bronx. We are hot. Last year, we built 8,845 housing units, 60% of it affordable, the rest of it, you know, not so affordable, but it's okay. And for a total of 45,332 units, and they're still building like crazy. I was able to bring in Fresh Direct, almost 4,000 jobs, quite a number of other companies, and more to come. I won't tell you who. But my most favorite part of this narrative is my unemployment number. I needed to bring in 14,000 people to work to no longer be number one. We have over 129,000 people in the Bronx who are working today that weren't working in 2009. So from number one in unemployment, we went shooting down all the way down to number 11. We are no longer the host of the poorest congressional district in the nation. We gave that to some Midwestern state. We don't want it back. And this was not just done by this woman here. Know that every one of you has to pick women to walk with. And the other thing that you have to pick are men that deserve to walk with you. I got that big time with the Bronx Borough President, Ruben Diaz Jr., much younger than me. And when I honored his mom, and this is what it's beautiful about life, it's a series of concentric circles, so always do good, because you never ever know when you're gonna get your dividends back. He was a teenager when I honored his mom, because I knew what an amazing woman she was. And this man understood that I appreciated women, but I also knew how to do my job. Okay. So find men who get it, walk with them. The ones who don't get it, walk to the left, walk to the right, or walk right through them, because you got no time. Your kids need to know that you're gonna leave this nation in a better place than what it is right now. And we can do that together by embracing everyone, including amazing men like our ambassador, and women like Galit, and countries who understand women, and countries who embrace not just our borough and our city, but also the island of Puerto Rico, where they have made such an amazing impact for the people who are the most in need. So I love being a woman, and I love standing before you and being inspired, and I am so thrilled to be here. And Galit, I think that the suggestion has already been made. There's a lot of stories to be told here. We gotta do this again, and we can't wait another year. Enjoy.
I'm sorry, I'm going to do something very unorthodox. Took the microphone from Michal for a second, because I have to say that the first time I met Marlene, when I came to her office, the first thing she showed me was a big poster of a new commercial area in the Bronx, and she tried to convince me to move Israeli companies to the Bronx. And I'm not even the economic attaché. And so everything she said is truth and much more. She's an amazing woman. And Ambassador approves.
Thank you very much. The Bronx is a really hot place now, so I don't know what you're waiting for. It is time to invest because soon it's going to be really, really expensive, and that's true.